While Rishi Sunak was settling in to listen to the Chancellor's speech, one of the biggest price tag decisions of government was leaking out across the media.
Have you betrayed the North? No.
Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak have signed off on the cancellation of the Manchester leg of HS2. But they've arrived in Manchester not quite ready to announce that or the package of transport investments aimed at softening the blow.
So today I'm freezing the expansion of the civil service and putting in place a plan to reduce its numbers to pre-pandemic levels.
But that's a £1 billion saving compared with many billions saved by not bringing high-speed rail all the way into Manchester. Number 10 also decided HS2 will stop 30 minutes outside central London at Old Oak Common.
But gripping this situation means re-examining it. It does not mean giving up, admitting defeat, you could say, or even, you could say, cancelling the future.
I think most people here would say that is a complete betrayal of the north of England, and it's no way to treat this part of the world. We were meant to be the place that was being levelled up in this Parliament, and at the end of it, we get a decision like this announced here without talking to any of us. So the whole of the Conservative government is here in Manchester. They're holed up in hotel rooms, yards from where we are now.
I think cancelling HS2 is the right thing to do, and to cancel as much of it as it's still possible to cancel.
1 year after Liz Truss's government began to disintegrate at Conservative Party conference, she was back.
Because in my view, we need more economics journalism and we need more GB News. Challenging the orthodoxy, broadcasting common sense.
Liz Truss said the Chancellor should immediately cut corporation tax to 19%. And there was broader advice too.
So let's stop taxing and banning things. Let's instead build things and make things. Let's be prepared to make Conservative arguments again, even if it's unpopular, even if it's difficult. I want everybody in this room to unleash their inner Conservative.
As Liz Truss finished, Jeremy Hunt was preparing to tell members in the conference hall that tax cuts could only come when public spending was tamed. For some here, that message wasn't radical enough.
Well, I do wish Liz Truss had been given more time to develop her premiership.
I'm not a fan of Rishi, I'd have to say.
What's wrong with him?
I think he's a bit too, like he said, a bit too machiney. He's not really I don't think he has a vision. I don't see a vision with him.
And that's where you are as well?
Yeah, I stand close to him on that, yeah.
So can the party win with Rishi?
Can the party win with anyone is the question.
Never heard so much nonsense in my life before. This is clearly a pitch on what the Conservative Party will look like after the next general election.
Oh, I remember that.
Yes.
In the wake of Liz Truss's failed premiership, the party has sprung up new groupings, many of them critical of Rishi Sunak. This one, calling for changes like tougher immigration laws, has called itself New Conservatives.
Time is with us. You know, liberalism is coming to an end. We're entering the post-liberal, post-globalist age.
New Conservatives. I feel I've seen you before.
No, I'm new to this. You know that. I only came in the other day.
Because this is a rally for a manifesto, and appreciate a bit of audience participation. So my one question for you is, why do taxes go up? Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy Hunt. Any rise on Jeremy Hunt?
And there was similar hostility to the top team at last night's Conservative Democratic Organisation Ball, where many believe forcing Boris Johnson out last summer was not right.
Well, I'd say if I am a lonely voice, I might be the only right one.
You're never a lone voice, Lydia.
Hi, Jake. Hi, Danny.
They're split on everything. They're split on net zero, they're split on taxation. There seems to be almost no unity at all. So, yeah, huge battles post the next election.
After defeat, you think?
Oh, yeah.
Rishi Sunak will now try to soothe critics of the HS2 cancellation inside and outside his own party, with a package of spending commitments on rail improvements, buses and roads. Announcements he'd hoped would come at the same time, now painfully staggered.
And Gary is with me now. So have we gone from sort of stability and uncertainty to a bit of chaos and confusion?
That was the Rishi Sunak promise. That's how he wanted to do his government, wasn't it? And this is messy. You can just imagine how little he is enjoying this. But he's also lost some political momentum with this decision, because the stuff he really wants to announce, the other uses he's going to put the money to that might have gone to HS2, that's all sort of stuck in the machine, and all anyone's hearing, well, the Chancellor's giving what's meant to be a keynote speech that nobody seems to pay any attention to, all anyone's hearing is the downside of losing HS2, as some would see it, and none of the upside of what he might do with the rest of the money. And of course he's doing it in Manchester. This wouldn't survive a script conference at thick of it, would it? I mean, this is absolutely extraordinary, and it dominated some of the questions in his interviews on Sunday. He couldn't get past the HS2 thing, he couldn't answer it, and now today it's come to dominate Monday of his conference. So we must expect, we don't know for sure, that he's going to try and lance this sooner rather than later, maybe as soon as tomorrow, with an emergency cabinet. He had to do that when the net zero watering down announcement leaked out. He then had an emergency cabinet. So we know how those work. Back then that was a sort of bit less than 30 minutes dial-in, only 2 hours notice. It's not really cabinet government as constitutionalists might like to think of it. And I think some people, I spoke to one member of the government today, thinking they're seeing a little bit of some of the problems of the way Rishi Sunak governs. He came from the Treasury. He operated with a very tight team. Gordon Brown did this when he went across to number 10. Sometimes you have to have things a bit broader in order to get challenge, in order to iron out some of the mistakes that are falling around his ears right here in Manchester.
Thanks, Gary. Well, we were due to speak to Jeremy Hunt, but just before we did it, he was suddenly called away. So I then spoke to the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, and I started by asking her whether she'd been invited to any imminent cabinet meetings about HS2.
No, not at all.
You don't know...
It's not true that there's a decision been taken and there's no cabinet meeting as far as I'm aware.
The decision is imminent though, isn't it? I mean, because no one's denying that there's going to be a cancellation or a reframing of it.
Well, no one's denying, no one's confirming. The reality is they've said there's no decision made.
But there will be tomorrow, won't there, in the real world?
There's no decision made, and there isn't, as far as I'm aware, a cabinet meeting either. And of course it's not in my area, right?
No, of course, but it's not a great way to be beginning the conference, is it, with the Prime Minister's own announcements kind of a bit all over the place and overtaking events?
Well, what I do know is in terms of the North, we spent £33 billion investing in infrastructure, transport infrastructure, train infrastructure in the North, a lot of it behind my parents'
But if they
house.
announce that they're going to cancel or slow down Birmingham to Manchester,
you're speculating.
when you're standing in Manchester, it's not going to be a great look.
And you're speculating, and of course I can't answer your question, but it's not true that there's a decision taken.
Well, I mean, the other darling of the conference is Liz Truss today. I don't know whether
She's
you've
your
seen
darling.
the
I think you all went to see her.
Well, I wasn't there, but the images from that meeting are extraordinary, and you can see how much people here still love her. It's like sort of some weird retro movie. Is this party out of touch with the country?
I don't think so, but I did speak to a lot of people about who was there, and I was told there was a lot of people there and a lot of journalists there. But you know what? I wish Liz all the best. Obviously, it's difficult for her. She was Prime Minister when she came last year.
It's not helpful, though, is it? Her going on about we need tax cuts now and sort of criticising the Sunak plan.
You're always going to have people who have their own views, who are urging you to go faster, or urging you to... You know, this was a big difference between Liz and Rishi during the leadership contest. You know, he was like, we've got to focus on inflation. Yeah. We've got to focus on getting inflation down. He was proved to be right. And then we can focus on growth, and then we can focus on tax cuts. You know, these are the ways that we've set out before.
But do you think this party has reconciled that? Because a lot of people seem to want a Liz Truss type figure back. What would you say to people who want that agenda back?
I honestly don't recognise that description. I honestly don't recognise that description of the party. I mean, I wasn't at that speech. I was at the business lunch.
But a lot of people here want tax cuts, don't they? They're saying 37%
that is true.
Is too high as an overall tax burden. Yes. And it should come down. Do you want it to come down?
Of course, everybody wants
before the next election.
But you need inflation to come down first. Otherwise, any tax cut will be irrelevant. Yeah. Inflation will just eat it away.
You've just announced, minimum service levels for universities, or as a consultation.
A consultation, yeah.
But that could effectively stop university lecturers striking.
Well, what we've said is it's really unfair. You know, students pay a lot now. They take a loan, they pay for their student experience. They expect a couple of things. They expect to be taught and they expect to get access to their tutors, and they expect their work to be marked. Most importantly, their final work, their degree. I think most of us have been pretty horrified by the prospect of all of those years and then right at the end not getting your degree, not getting it marked.
I mean, what you're saying is universities could basically sack lecturers who went on strike.
It's more
they wouldn't want to do that, would they? That would be self-defeating.
It's minimum service level. So it's basically saying, look, we expect you, if you're striking, we expect you to follow a minimum service, which is minimum contact hours potentially for those, particularly those coming up to finals, and certainly you know, a minimum service level that means you get your degree marked. I think that would be the most important thing. It's quite outrageous that there have been people who have not had their degree marked. They're still waiting for their degree marked today.
Rishi Sunak, we know, is very keen on replacing A-levels with a baccalaureate. Are you about to embark on one of those?
Well, you'll have to wait and see, but what Rishi said in his leadership contest, he was interested in looking at broader education options, and Maths to 18 is something that we've been working on to look at. You know, one thing that's true...
But is that going to happen before the election?
One thing that's true is our children spend... narrow the curriculum at 16, and they also spend less time studying 16 to 18 as well. You know, if you look at where they're going, at the world of work they're going into, who they're competing with globally, I want our children to have the very best, to have the broadest skills that they need to really be successful in the workplace. So we're always looking at what that is. We found maths is a big outlier. Most other children do maths up to 18 and beyond.
Gillian Keegan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, while the future of the rail project designed to speed up links to their city is being discussed inside the conference hall, our North of England correspondent Claire Fallon has been talking to people here in Manchester about their reaction to reports it's been shelved. She's outside Manchester Piccadilly train station for us now.
Yeah, and while the politics are playing out where you are, Krish, with a lot of the commentary around those optics of having your party conference in Manchester while you're about to can the bit of HS2 coming to Manchester, here the conversation is also about the real life consequences of getting rid of this transformative, as it was said, multi-billion-pound infrastructure investment coming to the north. And talking to people, you know, they were promised this would transform lives, it would transform the economy. This section of HS2 is where the bang for the buck happened. It's where the economic argument was made, not just about faster trains to and from London, but also about connectivity and capacity, about freeing up the fast trains from the slow trains, about more track, meaning more trains. Probably the best way I can describe the frustration from some today is by talking about a woman who I spoke to. Started off with her going, no, I don't like cameras. Then I said HS2, and she went for it. Let's have a look at what some of the passengers here have been saying to me.
All this promise to the north to make it easier for people here to actually get on with their lives. I think it's a way of keeping the north down and making sure that they can't prosper. I'm really, really angry, and we need some answers, and it needs to stop being this debate around just give us the truth. We just want the truth. Are you going to scrap it or not? It's not fair at all.
I'd say it's a pretty perfect encapsulation of everything that's going wrong in this country. Like the fact, firstly, that it costs so much money, partly because it's going through the constituencies it's going through, so everything's been built underground, you know, extortionate additional cost.
To be clear, not everyone wanted HS2 to come here. Some people will be celebrating, but this is also about levelling up. Front page of the Manchester Evening News this morning, before all of this went further, levelling up. How's it going, Prime Minister? Expect many people over the next couple of days to mention all of those promises to level up.
Claire Fallon. Well, earlier I spoke to the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, and I began by asking him how much instability was being caused by the government's position on HS2.
We've just had a cloud over us for about 3 weeks now, and it's astonishing. The government coming here, we're pleased to host them in our city, but they're holed up in hotel rooms yards from here, kind of about to take a big decision on the future of North England, and they won't even speak to us. I mean, what does that say about what kind of government they are? What does it say about what kind of people they are, that they wouldn't at least speak to us about a decision that will have enormous implications for the north of England in the rest of this century?
But what is the implication? If it is, say, just a delay?
If it's a delay, well, I've said that we could potentially live with that. If they were to prioritise the northern section, protect the line to Birmingham and rephase the building of it, well, talk to us about that. You know, we are reasonable people. We will have a view, but we will try and find a solution. The problem is they don't think they have to even pick up the phone. They don't think they have to reply to a letter.
What is the impact if it's the Birmingham-Manchester link that is gone?
Well, I just think you will permanently reduce the size of the northern economy if you do that. The evidence is clear that rail infrastructure builds economic growth. And if you kind of leave a situation where the southern half of Britain or the southeastern half of Britain has north-south and east-west new lines, but the north of England is still left with Victorian infrastructure, that is devastating from our point of view with regard to economic growth in the rest of this century. But it's also terrible news for people just going about their lives and not having daily chaos on the railways.
I mean, they will say, I'm sure, you know, that there's going to be east-west improvements and they will commit to the infrastructure that is required. Is it possible to have that without the whole thing?
We won't get a new east-west line unless the northern section of HS2 is protected, and that is the infrastructure coming up through Manchester Airport to Manchester Piccadilly. That is the core of the new east-west line, and if they're scrapping that, they're scrapping a new east-west line, or certainly one in any reasonable time scale. And so people need to be really clear about that. That's why we're setting that as a minimum acceptable today. They must build that infrastructure, protect the line to Birmingham, yes, build out to Liverpool and Leeds via Bradford, and underground at Piccadilly. That is where we could speak to them and see if we could find a solution and common ground.
What reassurances are you getting from the Labour Party in London about what they will do if they win the election next year?
Well, there is a commitment to both HS2 and NPR, and they will have to, like all of us, look at what is actually announced.
But are they saying that they will reverse whatever is cancelled?
No, because they need to look at what is actually announced. So we'll have to, all of us, see what the government says. And that's why we're in for a discussion with the government and with the Labour Party about getting a solution that works for everybody. So you know, we have a commitment, though, that the party will build Northern Powerhouse Rail and HS2, and we'll be talking to them in Liverpool next week about what we salvage, if you like, from the situation that we currently find ourselves in.
So you are getting the respect from the Labour leadership that you want?
Yeah, 100%. You know, we've had a lot of conversations with them, and it's a difficult situation for everybody, given the kind of the speculation and the uncertainty the government has allowed to run. I heard ministers on the TV over the weekend, oh, we're not commenting on speculation. Well, who caused that speculation? Who created the uncertainty? This is no way to run a country, and certainly no way to treat the north of England.
I mean, during COVID, we all remember your sort of megaphone diplomacy with London. Are you going to have to do the same thing over HS2?
If the government gets something right, I will applaud them and I will say so, and I have done. I've praised Michael Gove in the past for the Trailblazer devolution deal. But if they get it wrong and they treat people here with disrespect, then I'll call that out as well. And I see at the moment the public here and people across the north being treated with disrespect. What I see is that age-old attitude of people in Westminster and Whitehall thinking they can treat people in the north of England as second-class citizens when it comes to transport. That is what I see at the moment, and I hope that I'm about to be proved wrong and a better decision is coming. But we will call that out, and we'll call that out with no holds barred if that's what is the final decision.